Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, assalamu alaikum to all of our audience joining us once again for our deep dive into the last 10 surahs of the Quran. Today we're going to be going into Surat Al-Ma'un with Imam Adam Jamal, who's going to be our teacher and Imam for exploring these surahs. We'll be diving into some of the surahs, some of the linguistic features, and some of the tafsir as well, and discussing how this applies into our day-to-day life. And yeah, we'll get straight into it, inshallah. I think what we'll start with is an introduction to the surah. We've been using the tafsir from the study Quran. It's a good English tafsir, which kind of gives a lot of different perspectives in there as well. Lots of different tafsirs kind of into one. But I'll introduce it. It's 7 ayahs. So I'll begin. Bismillah. Most commentators maintain that Al-Ma'un is an early Meccan surah, most likely revealed after Surah 102. Al-Takawthur, although some maintain that verses 4 to 7 were revealed in Medina, given that all of its verses treat heedlessness and hypocrisy in the performance of religious obligations, including specifically prayer, verses 4 to 5, the entire surah may be from the Medinian period, as it was not until political advantages could be gained following the Prophet that hypocrisy became an issue for the early Muslim community. See commentary on 63 to 1, 63 1 to 8. Nonetheless, hypocrisy in religion was not seen as limited to Muslims alone. The surah takes its name from the word ma'un in the last verse, which in its widest sense indicates any act of kindness, charity, or assistance, which is where it gets its name. Its name is small kindness here. I don't know what it's mentioned in. There's no translation in it for Quran.com, but it's mentioned as small kindness. And what we'll do is we'll go into each verse and break it down word by word, line by line. What we can do is you can share my screen here. So this is the actual surah itself.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم. Have you seen the one who denies the final judgment? That is the one who repulses the orphan.
I can take us into the tafsir there as well, inshallah. I think 1 and 2 are together in this one, aren't they? Kind of like as a single sentence. Awesome. So 1 to 2. Has thou seen the one who denies religion? That is the one who drives away the orphan. That's what it's translated as in the study Quran. And there are 2 opinions regarding the reference of the one. Muqatil and Al-Kalbi said, this surah was revealed about Al-As ibn Wa'il al-Sahmi. Conversely, Ibn Jurayl said Abu Sufyan was in the habit of slaughtering 2 camels every week. On one occasion, an orphan came to him asking him for something. Abu Sufyan responded by hitting him with a stick. So God revealed, hast thou seen the one who denies religion? That is the one who drives away the orphan. Even if it was first recorded in reference to a specific individual, it still has a general implication. Religion here translates deen, and denying religion implies denial of all aspects of the message that was sent through the Prophet. Deen could also mean judgment and relate to the denial of the resurrection and other events of the afterlife. When verses 2 to 7 are viewed in relation to verse 1, the implication is that denying deen, whether it be religion or judgment, is the root of all other sins and transgressions. Verse 2 with 89, 17 to 19, the accusation of driving away the orphan also alludes to the habit of devouring the inheritances of orphans that is addressed in other verses. So that's the tafsir there. Some interesting stuff to unpack. There's lots of commentary on orphans, I find, in the Quran. And I wonder, it's something maybe I haven't experienced in my personal life is applying these verses. Maybe it's something that we're looking over.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, in this surah, you start with tying the one who denies the religion to the orphan, to
Yeah.
driving away the orphan. Um, that there's something to be said about the religion and taking care of the orphan.
Yeah.
Why is orphan mentioned so much in the Quran? The orphan is
Yeah.
mentioned because it the orphans were the most vulnerable of society in
Mm,
Mecca in that time. The most vulnerable people in society were orphans. And the most vulnerable people in today's society continue to be orphans, to be honest, among the most vulnerable people. There's also
mm,
other vulnerable populations. So it's not necessarily only about orphans, but orphans are given a prime spot in terms of the importance of taking care of those vulnerable people. You have
yeah.
other vulnerable people in society, right? So you have vulnerable people, you have, for example, homeless people that could be
Yeah.
vulnerable, very vulnerable. You have, new converts to Islam. They're very vulnerable because they just dropped everything in their life to become Muslim, social, family, and so on. A lot of change
Mm,
in their life. Um, and so all of these can be seen as vulnerable populations. So anyone who helps someone who's vulnerable, that is a sign of religion, because religion is not just something which we believe between us and Allah, but
mm,
this deen is meant to make a difference in our lives, and it's meant to make us make a difference in the lives of others.
mm,
There's a connection between disbelief and disregarding of vulnerable populations. There's a connection there because the one who does not believe in any hereafter, who does not believe in any accounting, because the other meaning of deen, Maliki Yawmiddin, the master of the day of resurrection, deen meaning the resurrection, because deen also has the meaning of debt, right?
mm,
Deen has the meaning of from dain, which means debt. So one of the meanings is debt. So you have a debt that you owe Allah, that He gave you this life, He gave you this opportunity, He gave you this trust, this amana of this life. How did you use this life? How did you spend this life? You had the opportunity to help an orphan. Abu Sufyan slaughtering 2 camels every week. Camel is huge. If you slaughter a
mm,
goat, which is a tiny animal, that's enough to feed your family, right, for
mm,
weeks, right? Forget for one week slaughtering 2 camels, right? And so in the same time that he is slaughtering these camels, an orphan comes to him and he hits the orphan with a stick. Not only does he refuse the orphan, but he actually abuses the orphan. And so you see that this example is given that the one who rejects the deen is also the one who rejects the orphans, because
mm,
it's a similar thing. Now imagine someone who embraces the deen and then rejects the orphan. Then what is the reality of their deen? Abu Sufyan eventually he did accept Islam. He did submit, right? Because Mecca was taken and he was the leader of Mecca, and he came under the protection of the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ
mm,
said, I will do to you as I did to the brothers of Yusuf. Idhabu fa'antum at-tulaqa. Go, for you are free. And so you had this Abu Sufyan character who, you know, was given this example of as someone who rejected the deen and also rejected the orphan. And so we must be very careful. What does religion mean in our lives, and how does it impact us to make an impact on the lives of others, and in particular vulnerable populations like orphans?
Subhanallah. I actually, I think, Jazakallah khair for that. I think I didn't visualize really what was, when it said slaughtered 2 camels every week. We said, actually, wait, think about how much food this is. Because whenever when I saw slaughtered, the first thing I thought of was, oh, I didn't really understand what this referring to. Like maybe it was like when I always think of like, oh, it's maybe like Qurbani. It's like, he's giving it out or something. But now I understand. Okay, wait, hold on. He's actually this is just an absurd amount of, that's quite a lot of consumption. So I think that when I picture that and someone asks, oh, can I have some? On that matter, I went through a bit of a whirlwind when it came to Qurbani. And I thought, and I had to look into it for a bit, and I think in the end I just ended up doing what everyone else did, which was doing it in some like doing it in another country. So you give someone money to do it, and then they'll do it in in a poor country to do the the contribution of the meat for Eid. And I felt like that the purpose of that was a bit more similar to this, that you feel that you have a direct contribution to the people around you. I was thinking, if you in your area were to do something like that, and you looked at the people that were in need in society and fed them, what kind of impact that would have on how society views Muslims. But then I kind of found, oh, it needs to be to other brothers and sisters of Islam. You can't just give it to anyone, is what I understood from that. So then I kind of was like, okay, maybe I'll just do the thing everyone else does and not try to overcomplicate things. Um, what's kind of the so is that was that the right finding? I know I've kind of gone on a bit of a detour, but just when I kind of came across this, made me think a bit.
Yeah, so the slaughtering of animals, in terms of zakat, the qualification or the one who is most priority of zakat is your poor relatives. So your relatives that are deserving of zakat, meaning they have less than what is nisab and they cannot feed themselves, or they
Okay.
have big needs. So the first one is your relatives, even if they are not close to you, and then the
Mm,
second priority is local to you. So it does seem a bit. It doesn't sit well with me that someone earns in dollars or pounds in the West and
yeah.
then does their qurbani in rupees
Yeah,
or
that's what I was, that's what I
dinars,
was thinking. This doesn't
or
really seem fair.
and, and, and,
Yeah.
and looks at it from that cost perspective, right? Um, so that's number one, and I understand that's not everyone's intention. Sometimes people just feel like people over there need it more than people over
Yeah,
here.
I get that.
They're right to a degree, but we do have a lot of food insecurity even in the West, especially in America. I mean, in England maybe it's a little different, but we have quite a lot of food insecurity. You have food insecure homes. You have Muslims in America are
Mm,
among the poorest of the religions in terms of being in need, and
mm,
very you have a big dichotomy between maybe the immigrant Muslims who came from middle to upper middle class, um, with the emphasis on education to America, and then you
mm,
have converts. You have what we call indigenous Muslims, like the black brothers and sisters who are, were formerly part of Nation of Islam and then converted to regular Islam or traditional Sunni Islam, and
mm,
uh, a lot of there's that dichotomy, there's that division. Also, people maybe who came as refugees and so on, who are in
mm,
need, who do have food insecurity, and who our obligation is to them first because they are our locality.
yeah.
Um, and then when it comes to zakat, yes, many scholars are of the opinion that it should be only for Muslims, but there are even people who say you can make it for non-Muslims. The preference is given to Muslims, but if there are non-Muslims, then you can even give it to them, and that will make an impact because
Mm,
actually one of the categories of zakat is the ones whose hearts are being brought close to Islam. So, of the eight
mm,
categories, one of them is feeding the poor who can't feed themselves. One of the categories is those who actually distribute the zakat. One of the
mm,
categories is those who are traveling and can't get back home. One of the categories is the people whose hearts can be brought closer to Islam. So a non Muslim could fit under the category of that who cannot feed himself, and that's a difference of
mm,
opinion. But a non Muslim can also fall under the category of someone who his heart can be brought close to Islam in that way.
mm,
And we do see all the time that people that are converting to Islam or are close to converting to Islam, not all of them, of course, but many of them, they come from a background where they are in between situations and they could use support to help them get to their next step, right? And then they can prosper, inshallah. But they need that helping hand at the beginning, and they're looking for a change because they know that whatever they believe or whatever they're currently within the system they're working within has not been supportive of them. And so a lot of
yeah.
times attracts them to Islam is this idea of equality, is this idea of equality before Allah, is the idea that the most honorable, most noble of you is the one who is the most mindful of Allah, right? This idea of no white is better than any black, no black is better than any white, no Arab is better than any non-Arab, no non-Arab is better than any Arab,
Mm.
by just of their skin or of their race, or of their culture. No one is better than anyone else. People are appealed to this because they want some change in their lives, and they're looking for something that tells them that they have value, inherent
Mm.
value, being the children of Adam and Hawa. So anyway, going back to kind of the question,
Yeah.
that yes, priority is given to locality actually over being far away. Even the da'wah, when the Prophet
Mm.
ﷺ was in the da'wah, then um, he was told to give da'wah first to al Qura, Mecca, wa man hawlaha, and whoever is around Mecca. So
Mm.
Mecca first, whoever is around Mecca. Your locality is the most important.
Yeah. It's difficult, you know, if you as a Muslim, you walk down the street, you see someone in need, and you say, I'm gonna send that food. You know, I'm part of your community. Like it's still your community. It's still your home at the end of the day. You're there as someone, a citizen of that society. You say, I see you in need, but I'm also going to take the food that I could give to you and send it thousands of miles abroad. I still understand the sentiment of people who do that, and I'm not saying that's something wrong, necessarily wrong with that, but it's very difficult to still walk like past those people. For me, it's like literally on my doorstep, right? I don't have to walk very far. I don't even have to get in the car to see people in need. It's very difficult for me to then try to isolate my mind from that and say, yeah, I'll send it somewhere else. And I think that's such a powerful thing. It's so explicitly religious, you know, for you to say, look, this, I'm giving this to you. It's not even like rice, you know, it's not even like bread. You know, someone says, oh, give something to the poor. Let me buy you some bread or something. I used to have like, you know, this, you know, there'll be people, they'll complain, oh, why are the poor so picky? You should just take what you want. But actually, we're told, no, no, give them like the most expensive thing. Like give them lamb. Give them like this is like stuff. Oh no, we only like have on like an occasion for ourselves. You know, it's the same. It's what you say. What you mentioned. Sorry. You know that no one is different from another. Creed, you know, creed, race, you know, background, ethnicity. I think it's quite a powerful thing to do in your local area. I think that would have such a huge impact on how people view Islam, how people view what is this religion? Why is someone coming up to me giving me this luxury meal? What have I done? You know, that will be for a lot of people. I think locally would be like, whoa. I think they would that would really make some thoughts go. They'd just be confused. I feel if no one's done that before. I think that's the purpose almost. It's just to disrupt that. You know, here's some cheap rice. It's easy to feed you with rice. But I think it does bring us back to this verse here. Is you know, if you're turning away from that, someone's asking you for something. The orphan's asking you for something. The homeless person might be asking you for something. You can't. You are in that position of denial, really, of your own religion. This is you've been asked to do this. Someone, not even you've been asked to do this, and you're not even seeking it out, and someone's seeking it from you. Like the opportunity is right in front of you, and this is a commentary on saying, you know, this is equivalent to denying your religion. It's not even a little thing to just say, oh, brush it off. It's you know, it's just someone who's just going to ask for something. It's probably not even true. You know, this is equivalent to denying the religion itself. So it's got a lot of weight from what I can see from this verse.
Jazakallah khair. Shall we move on to the next few verses?
100%. Awesome. I will get back the verses here. I think we're
We'll read verse 3, 4, and 5. ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون, and does not encourage the feeding of the poor. ولا يحض does not encourage على طعام, the feeding of المسكين, the poor. فويل للمصلين, so woe to those hypocrites who pray, الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون, yet are unmindful of their prayers. So those who pray but are heedless or mindful or unmindful or forgetful of their prayers.
Jazakallah khair for that recitation. I'll go ahead and read the commentary as well. We have the commentary split between verses 3 and 4 to 5, so I can just read 3 first and we can stop there if we would need to. And does not urge feeding the indigent. I think the other translation was a bit easier to get. So what was your and does not encourage feeding the poor, feeding of the poor. So this can be seen as a reference to all that one who denies religion does in opposing the proper moral order. Verse 3 can be seen as a reference to all that one does not do. This verse could also be rendered and does not encourage giving the food of the indigent, implying that the food being withheld from the indigent is actually something to which the indigent have a right, for the believer is one in whose wealth is acknowledged due for the beggar and the deprived. On the one hand, the present verse admonishes those who do not themselves feed the indigent. On the other, it admonishes those who implore others not to do so, and who are therefore not only stingy with their own money, but encourage stinginess in others. This is related to 36:47, where those who do not wish to feed the needy offer a pseudo-theological excuse for not doing so, saying, are we to feed those whom, if God willed, he should feed? This last bit reminds me of kind of the question of evil that sometimes Muslims will be asked is, oh, there's all the evil in the world, why doesn't God help them? It's I think still around. It's interesting that the Quran actually refers to this argument. I'll sometimes hear thrown around.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I mean, the basic answer to that is free will, right? Free will is the answer to that question, because when you think about free will, if if Allah was to intervene and fulfill what obligations we have, then what is the point of this obligation and what is the point of this free will? But the one who denies that there is any obligation, the one who says, I do whatever I want and you can do whatever you want, they do not see an obligation, they do not see free will. They're just trying to find holes that they
Mm,
can dig into, and they're not actually looking at the system of worldview that Islam offers holistically from all its perspectives. Because Islam doesn't just say one thing. Islam doesn't just say um, God does whatever He wants. God is all powerful, and that's it. We say God is all powerful, and He has given us free will, and He is testing us to see who will be the best in action. And so, if
mm,
He does the actions on our behalf, then what is the point of these actions which He has given us, these obligations that He has given us,
very true.
um, for us to continue to deny His presence in our lives and His existence, right? Um, so even if we do feed, it is not by our own will, but it is by Allah's permission and His great blessing upon us that we have it in our hearts to even feed.
Mm. It reminds me of this quote I've heard. I don't remember exactly where from, but someone was basically saying, I feel most bad for atheists out of any group because they actually remember God probably more than any of us. And this feels like one of those examples. You don't believe in God, but yet you almost always refer to Him. Almost always. It's like, are we to feed those who, if God willed, He would feed? It's just constant thinking about God. They probably have more thoughts of God than believers would, because they are constantly in a effort to try to deny. And with so many, it's one of these things. It's like, it reminds me of I think people will say, they'll be like, oh, if it's when non-believers, people that don't necessarily believe in Islam or any religion, will say something along the lines of, if God is real and hell is real, it's I'll be with the rest of them, or it's something along these lines. It's just one of these kind of really odd statements that really weirdly confirm what you believe, but also then just making some sort of odd comments about it that almost just doesn't really make any sense. Like, exactly what this is like, are we to feed those whom, if God willed, He would feed? So, like, are you denying, if you're denying God, you've not really done very well here because you've also just admitted that this would be, if you've kind of acknowledged God in this sentence in either case, you're thinking in that way in a God-centric worldview that this would be the action of God. And if you're accepting God, you've also just challenged him directly in a also very odd way. So it doesn't really achieve much of one or the other. But is this verse along the lines of, just a question back to you again, is this verse along the lines of promoting good, forbidding evil? Not only should you, it's something, this is actually now, we've gone from reprimanding the one who drove away the orphan to now reprimanding the one who doesn't even urge others to do so also.
Yeah, I think there. I mean, that's the whole message of the Quran, right? Is how can you? What are the actions that you have to do? So one of the things which religion requires you is don't drive away the orphan. Bring the orphan close. Do not do not discourage the feeding. So here, right, the language. He doesn't even encourage the feeding of
Mm,
the one in need, does not even encourage the feeding of the poor. So it doesn't say does not feed the poor. He doesn't even encourage it.
yeah.
Okay. So it's not even a principle that he even believes in, right?
Wow.
He believes in this extreme self reliance. He believes in this extreme arrogance that whatever he has accomplished, he's accomplished on his own and let the other person do the same. When in fact every success that we have is dependent on so many factors, factors that are beyond our control, factors that we were born into, factors of the world and how it is, and the privilege that we have, the location that we were born, the parents that we had. So much of
Mm,
it is based on not what we do but who we are, and that is a great blessing of Allah. And so if someone does not even consider that, if someone does not even appreciate that, then they are the one who denies religion, who drives away the orphan, and does not even encourage the feeding of the poor. Just
mm,
on principle. Forget feeding the poor, they don't even encourage it on principle.
mm.
Um, so let's move on to the next verses, inshallah.
Exactly.
The ones that, so woe unto the praying who are heedless of their prayers.
And the tafsir for this part as well. For the possible meanings of woe, wail, see, these verses could be seen as a reference to the prayer of the disbelievers, about which another verse says, their prayer at the house is naught but whistling and clapping. So taste the punishment for having disbelieved. Nonetheless, the majority of commentators interpret them as a reference to those who, because of their heedlessness, receive no benefit from their prayers when they perform them and fear no retribution when they do not. Or to the hypocrites who pray in public but not in private. These verses can also be taken to indicate those who fail to perform their prayers at the proper time or who do not complete the required bows and prostrations, or interpreted as applying to those who perform all the prayers properly but fail to do so with humility, contemplation, and remembrance of God. A hadith states, this is the prayer of the hypocrite. He sits watching the sun until it is between the two horns of Satan, i.e., just above the horizon. Then he stands and pecks out 4 prayer cycles in which he remembers God but little, regarding the implications of neglecting prayers. SubhanAllah, I thought these verses are really powerful, especially the way that woe onto the praying is isolated like that. It's like quite a shock factor. Makes you go, what do you mean woe onto the praying? And then it's like who are heedless of their prayers. Then it's like, okay, now I see how that can now be applied to quite a few situations as we've seen in this commentary. SubhanAllah.
Jazakallah khair. So, wailul lil musallin, right? So, musallin, those are the people who come for salah, al musallin.
Mm.
Those are the people who pray salah, al musallin. Fawailun lahum, wailun lil musallin. That's like you said, it's a shock factor. It's
Yeah,
suspenseful. Like, what exactly is this? Gets your
yeah,
attention. Why would Allah say, destruction to the people who pray?
yeah.
Then he clarifies, الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون, those who are heedless of their prayers. Sahun is the same root as as-sahu. As-sahu, sujud as-sahu, when you are in your prayer and you make a mistake due to forgetfulness, you miss a rak'ah or you forget a rak'ah or you forget a part of it that can be undone by adding two sajdas at the end of your prayer. So those who are heedless of their prayers, meaning they are forgetful, um, they are, not just unintentionally. In the case of sujudu sahu, it's unintentional, but this is
Mm.
more intentionally being forgetful or loose or not really, being consistent with that. Um, and of course, it has other, possible options as well or interpretations, as you mentioned.
SubhanAllah. It's no, it's very powerful stuff. Especially there's the different commentaries, even of just waiting until the sun hits the two horns of Satan. It from what I understand, what I feel from this verse is that your hypocrite is almost worse than someone that would not know any better and just didn't pray. Praying and knowing in the back of your mind, whether you were someone in the back of your mind, I don't mean anything by this. I don't have humility in this. I don't really respect the prayer. It's almost worse because you essentially what you're doing, but then you have to take such an active, like delaying prayer is such a more active step than someone who never knew to pray to begin with. Really, it's really weird how that's the case. You're not even by not doing something or by doing something in a way without humility is such a more active step against Allah than someone which wouldn't know any better. I feel as a disbeliever, and someone, yeah, I'm a believer on the outside. I'm gonna pray outside, but then not pray inside. It's like, so you think you're almost you're tricking someone. You're like, you're doing something here. Um, that's what I get from this, and that's why I feel like there's so much impact in this verse. Is really illustrating. Look, this is how contentious someone can be as someone as a hypocrite, which you might even fall into yourself if you're not careful by not having humility in your salah or by leaving it to the end of the day. Subhanallah.
Jazakallah khair. All right, shall we conclude the last two verses?
Sounds good.
الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. They are the ones who only show off their prayers and refuse to give even the smallest of aid.
Jazakallah khair again for your recitation. I'll just read the tafsir of that last couple bits. I'll read them together. There is two separate pieces, but I'll just read them together so we can comment on them together. So those who strive to be seen, as the translation given in the study Quran, those who strive to be seen are the hypocrites, of whom the Quran says, when they perform the prayer, they perform it idly and to be seen of men, and they worship God but little. Which is to say that they do not perform prayer out of worship, but only to increase their reputation, as opposed to those who are constant in their prayers. And those who are mindful of their prayers, for their Quranic treatment of hypocrisy in the similitude see 63, 1 to 8. Yet refuse small kindness. This verse is understood to indicate those who perform their devotions well, but do not act kindly towards others. Small kindness translates to ma'un, in accordance with the widespread interpretation that sees it as an allusion to utensils or tools that people would share and lend to one another, such as a pickaxe, a pot, a bucket, or other items of this nature. It can also be seen as an allusion to anything in which there is a benefit. Many take refuse small kindness to indicate refusal to pay the obligatory zakat, and others say that ma'un means property. But in general, in the Qurayshi dialect, and others say that this verse means to refuse guests. According to all these interpretations, the verse indicates the stinginess exhibited by hypocrites who only come to the prayer lazily and only spend reluctantly. It's definitely I think it's one of the kind of duality of when you have something like a mosque whether you have lots of other believers, there's the positive effect that someone might come so that because they're encouraged by lots of other people they know doing the same. But then there's the flip side of that. Someone's coming because they want to impress everyone else that they know is also coming. And I guess that's something up to the individual believers to make sure they're doing one and not the other.
Jazakallah khair. That's exactly it, right? And it says those who yura'un from riya, ra'a yura'i riya'an. So some people might recognize the word riya as showing off your deeds. And
Mm,
riya is been said by scholars to be a minor form of shirk, meaning it is a type of
mm,
shirk because you are worshipping not Allah, but you are worshipping others. How are you worshipping others? Because you
mm,
are praying for them. You're not praying for Allah. And so that is a very hard rejection of this kind of behavior. At the same
mm,
time, someone can have kind of a doubt in their hearts as to what their actual real belief is. And that is a good sign because the Prophet ﷺ said, if you are afraid for your belief and you are afraid for your intention, then that is a
mm.
sign of your intention, that is a sign of your belief. And so it's good,
SubhanAllah.
it's a
Wow.
healthy, healthy doubt to have, but to still do the actions. So someone who says, I won't pray because then I'll be showing off,
Yeah,
right, is also now not praying because of people. And
yeah,
someone
yeah,
who prays because other people are watching is now also doing an action because others are watching, and not doing an action because others are watching is also incorrect. So what do? You do the action and you do your best to fix your intention. And so you can accept, for example, you're in the masjid, you don't normally pray extra prayers, but you're in the masjid, you're surrounded by Islam, you're surrounded by a good environment, you're surrounded by other Muslims, and you might pray a little more than what you normally pray, and that is okay because you're in a good environment. It's not always because of riya, it's not always because of riya, and that's not always the case, but it's good to have that in your mind to make sure I'm doing this for uh, not just for the people, but I'm doing this for Allah. I'm not doing it for the people, I'm doing it for
mm,
Allah. And then the other way, the second way, so one way is the intention itself, and the second way is to have those private actions that you do that's just between you and Allah. That is more than just the things that you do in public. So if you find yourself only doing these things in public and never in private, then
yeah,
that is a sign that you need to do more in private. It's not a final, indication that you're acting hypocritically, but it is something that should warn you that, hold on a second, you're doing this only in public and never in private. And so what is your
yeah,
private actions? And this is why Allah talks about zakat, and he talks
yeah,
about
yeah,
giving, and he says sirran wa alaniya. He praises the ones who give in private and openly, because when
mm,
you give openly, you encourage others. Because others, it's interesting. One time in our fundraiser at the masjid,
yeah,
we got pledges in advance. So we asked people in advance what they would like to pledge on the day of the fundraiser, and so people in
yeah,
their mind had a number, and then they saw their friends who were giving more, and so
yeah,
multiple times they said we'd like to give more because they felt encouraged and they felt competitive in good.
yeah,
We felt competitive in good once the things were announced or people were actually, telling people what they were going to give. And
yeah,
so giving out loud is important, but giving in private is also important. And one of the people who receive the shade on the day of judgment is the ones who gave their right hand and their left hand did not know it. So gave in such a way which was extremely private and
mm,
confidential, not get any worldly reward, because you do get worldly reward when you give in public, because you get recognition, people appreciate you, people appreciate, they give you more respect, they start to listen to you more, they involve you in things, they invite you to
yeah,
other fundraisers, you get more reputation, you get more attention from people. So it is a very big thing, but you want to regulate that by also doing the private and the public both. You want to do the public
mm,
and the private giving in everything. And then the
yeah,
second verse talks about, the final verse here says, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ, and ma'un is the verse through which the word which the title of the surah is. So the theme of this really is small kindnesses. Ma'un is the smallest of kindness, like you said, the tools that people would lend to each other, such as a pot, a bucket, or other things. You go to your neighbor and you ask for something simple to use, and not even the neighbor's computer or lawnmower or some
Yeah.
intricate machine, but just a simple thing like a bucket, you know?
Yeah.
Or the smallest act of kindness could be seen. You go into a restaurant and you ask for a glass of water free of cost, or you go, like you go somewhere and they don't even offer you water, right? The smallest of kindness. This is something which is the mark of the believer, is that they have their salah, but their salah is not in a vacuum. Their salah is connected to the kindnesses that they do for others, the generosity they show for others, because that is truly them believing that their rizq is not from their own hands, but it is something that is a form of blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they see giving as a sign of gratitude to Allah, and worship is also a sign of gratitude. So each of those is the same. Generosity is gratitude, and salah is gratitude. And if you don't have salah, then you likely don't have the other either. If you don't have this generosity of your time with Allah, then you likely don't have generosity of your time and your wealth with those that are less fortunate than you. And so Allah ties these two things together in this beautiful and yet short surah.
Jazakallah khair. Very true. Thank you for reflecting on the giving of in the masjid as well. It reminds me when I went to Cambridge Central Mosque, I visited, and I think it was just before Ramadan. So they have this thing, and like you can automate your giving once every month. And I think it was quite a big amount. If you donate something like £50, £100 a day for the whole month, they would give you a brick of the masjid, right? And I don't know if you've seen Cambridge Central Mosque. It's a beautiful masjid. It's like, honestly, if you come to the UK, don't go to London. Go to go to Cambridge, see that mosque. It's brand new. It's all natural materials. It's if you think you're in like a Gulf state, you're not. You're in Cambridge, with a beautiful mosque like that. So they give you a brick of the mosque, and inside a frame, and the frame says this person donated X. They donated £5,000. But then the dilemma is, what, you're going to put that on the wall, and then guests are going to come, and then they're going to say, "Look at my brick from the masjid." How's that going to work? Every time someone comes over, you're just going to be full of pride of that one time you gave, and then all the intention every single time someone comes, and you feel a bit proud of it. That intention is just going to get weaned away. It's such a difficult thing. It's like, to be honest with you, I'd love a brick of that masjid, but also I can't put it up because what am I gonna? Every time it's gonna be a challenge. Like I'm gonna be like all that zakat I might have given is now gonna be like degraded by me having a brick up on the wall. But subhanallah, it's such a balance. I think it's just one of those things believers really have to take upon themselves to make sure, and but I like how it gives you liberty in that sense to make judgment based on the situation. Is it going to have benefit to the community? Maybe I should do it publicly. Is it going to just make me feel really proud and make me feel better than everyone else? Yeah, keep that to yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to be hard on people. Someone might give publicly and give a lot of money and have a brick in their name or whatever.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean that they're not also giving in private, and you might not even know if Allah has blessed them and they are sharing their blessing with the community to build the houses of Allah. Then who are we to deny their intention or to judge their intention? Um, and of course the masjid also recognizes that
yeah,
this is a way of raising funds. If it's such a beautiful masjid that costs a
yeah,
lot of money,
yeah, for sure.
and it is also a symbol of Islam and a symbol of the strength of Islam and a symbol of the importance that Muslims give to their masjid, that you can build such a thing. um, and so I mean I'm not against the idea. I'm okay with the idea in general, but I
Yeah,
think giving someone benefit of the doubt is important, and at the
of
same
course.
time recognizing that we can't judge people's intentions. We can only judge their actions. And if someone
Mm,
has done something good for the masjid, just like Uthman radiallahu anhu in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was well known that he was the one funding expeditions. He was the one
yeah, yeah,
funding war with Quraysh. He was the one who bought a well right, for the Sahaba to drink from. So we cannot doubt his intentions and say he did it for such and such reason. But we simply appreciate what he has done for the Ummah, and we give him recognition for what he has done. And his intention is between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one can say if his intention was good or bad. But the one who does not, so this surah is a very private surah, isn't it? Because
Mm.
someone who refuses, someone who prays in public, or does kindnesses in public but not in private, um, that is a true challenge that is being presented with this surah. This surah is a very personal surah. Let's look at ourselves, look at our own deeds. Don't. This is the surah is not about judging others. This surah is about
Yeah.
judging yourself, right?
Yeah.
This surah is about judging yourself and looking within to see, do your private deeds match up with your public ones?
Mm. Jazakallah khair, 100%. Yeah, thank you for that reflection on. Yeah, I'm glad. I think from your perspective, maybe it's the head of a mosque. You maybe had to, as in we're not very good at fundraising and as a small community. Maybe I need to start using these tactics
You need to
and
start
start
putting
taking
people's
bricks.
names on bricks.
It's not even a name. Your name's not on that. You just get a brick. I don't know where they've got so many bricks from the
I
building. Like
see.
surely they're on the building itself. The building's already built.
I
So
see.
like, did
I
they
don't
take
know.
them out? Like someone's here knocking down a wall.
I don't know.
And
Yeah.
now, like, there's a big hole in the masjid because everyone, mashallah, so many people donated. Now there's a hole. They're not gonna fill in.
But
How,
yeah,
how,
I mean, if it works, if it works and it's not haram, the masjid can do it.
but
If people feel a sense of ownership, they feel a sense of, relationship, they feel a sense of connection to the masjid. This is a good thing.
yeah,
People feel a sense of like, relationship, right? It could be that
mm,
someone gave on behalf of their mother or father who passed
yeah,
away, who cannot benefit from the recognition anyway, but
yeah,
they feel like they've left something behind, in both memory, physical memory, as well as in, obviously the spiritual sense.
100%. Jazakallah khair. And I think that brings us to the end of this surah now. I think we'll just wrap up, inshallah. We thank you all for joining us for Surah Al-Ma'un. Next week, we'll be going into Surat Al-Kawthar 108. These are now on Sunday, 5 p.m. GMT, as this episode will be. So you'll be able to tune in next week for that, inshallah. We've got a few announcements before you go. So tune in for the last few minutes, inshallah. And we thank very much our guest, Imam Adam, for joining us for this and guiding us through the tafsir and correcting some of our we can ask some of our questions and guide us through, inshallah. Jazakallah khair
All right,
for
inshallah.
your time today, inshallah. Cool. And I have a few things to share with you, the community, inshallah. So the first of those will be I'll just get this up, just bear with me. So at Quranic, we've actually started releasing our Learn the Arabic Alphabet book. So this book is a great book for English speakers going over to the Arabic language. It includes a lot of the phonetics of those Arabic letters, which are from the English language. I think almost every episode you see me stumbling over my words in Arabic when I'm trying to read the words from the tafsir or otherwise. And this is a way to not do that. So it's actually a good way to actually, especially as an English speaker, seeing the parallels in the English language to the Arabic language, because there is some parallels. There are some examples in that book of where there's not parallels, so we have to kind of start from scratch and describe new phonetic concepts. So it's a good book for people like myself who might have some background in Arabic but need some reminding, or people that are new to the language as well, whether that's children or reverts or otherwise. It's always good to be on top of those, especially as it's a good foundation to then build from. When you then want to start reading Quran and start learning the meaning of that and so on and so forth. It's a great foundation to start with. So that's available on Amazon for $15.99, and you can do so by scanning the QR code there. And that's actually a physical book you'll get in the mail, not an ebook, which is great. And the next thing I'd like to share with you, our Quranic community, is our beta program. So I'll just put the link up here. So whether you're aware or not aware, we have the Quranic app, which is a leading way for Muslims to actually learn the meaning of the Quran, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. So one thing we're working on within that is Quran clips. And Quran clips is a way for you to actually see other people reciting the Quran, be inspired by that, and share yourself reciting the Quran. I often hear lots of stories of people which started reading the Quran from no experience, and now are at a point where they're sharing it on social media platforms, on TikTok and elsewhere and otherwise. But this is a way for people to actually, from our community, from the Quran reading community, to share themselves reading the Quran with other people on that journey. And it's not mixed in with everything else that you might see on Instagram and TikTok, which might be not be so halal as the Quran. It's nice to have a separate space for that. But it's something we need your help with. It's something we're actively working on. And if you'd like to join that beta and actually test this out, make sure it's ready for the Ummah to use, you can actually scan this QR code, join our beta program, and actually help us work on this and build it to a level where it's ready for other Muslims to use and benefit from, inshallah. And inshallah, the reward from helping us with that and finding problems and working on us with that will benefit you, inshallah, and be a deed for your part, as other Muslims will then go on to use that, benefit from that, and learn how to read Quran with that, recite with that, recite beautifully as Imam Adam did just earlier for us. So I think with that, I will say Salaam Alaikum to our audience, and we'll see you next week for the next episode.